Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Classic Gaming Brothers. I'm Zach.
And I'm Seth.
And we're the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right. We are the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's
right.
That's right.
At least it's gotten cooler.
It's gotten cooler. Another weather update.
Oh, another weather update. Oh, I hope somebody's listening to this podcast gets only their weather for our particular region, and that's how they get updated by the weather.
I hope they just assume it's the world's weather.
It is the world's weather, because wherever the Classic Gaming Brothers are, that's where the world begins and ends.
That's true.
We're the Alpha and the Omega.
That Sunday person would really downvote that.
Too bad she's blocked. But maybe she's still an active listener.
I hope so. I hope we've never lost a listener because of a joke we made. I hope we've lost listeners because we're bad at research.
Yeah, we've lost listeners because we're bad at researches. We're boring.
I'm perfectly fine with that, but I don't want to ever make someone feel so bad that they can't listen to our podcast.
Yeah. We want to be wholesomely funny. We don't want to be raunchy funny.
Right.
Except that episode back in episode 69.
Man, that was many, many moons ago, because we're on episode 345, 346, 345.
At least we have some, possibly, an inside scoop on possibly getting media badges for next year PAX.
Man.
That'll be our swan song.
That'll be the last episode we ever do, is when we finally get media badges.
We'll be not covering PAX.
It'd be really funny if we got media badges for PAX and we just didn't cover it that weekend.
When we did do a pre-PAX pod or a post-PAX pod.
Yeah, we're just like, man, fuck this.
Never, we would get blacklisted. We would never get a media badge from them.
I know. Yeah. PAX, if you're listening, we're joking.
Oh, let's be real. They're not listening to this episode.
No. Of course not.
I would bet on that every day of the week. Maybe closer to when PAX happens, we'll be more professional.
Yeah, we'll be nice closer to PAX.
We won't be nice to EA, though.
No, I hate EA.
Anyway, Zach.
Yes, Seth.
What have you recently been playing?
Seth, recently I've been playing a game that I actually got a while ago. Do you remember the game Starfield that Bethesda made?
I do. I think you're going to talk about something that I mentioned to you that it was a thing.
You might have, yeah.
And then I completely forgot about it because I only have so much room in my brain for things.
Yeah.
And then you actually acted on my...
I did, and I'll explain the process, because it is a process to get this running. So Starfield was a game that came out in 2023, and obviously it was a Bethesda game, so it got a lot of attention, and then it got no attention. And I mean, I don't want to be unfair to Starfield. I think it was an overly ambitious game that was just missing something, right?
It felt really flat. I played it.
That's the problem. Yeah, it's very empty.
Yeah, I was playing around with it, and it was like the wonkiness of Skyrim without any of the story for you to stay around.
Or the charm. Like, there's a little bit of charm with wonky Skyrim where, like, sometimes funny things happen because the game is just that way. But when it happens in Starfield, sometimes it's like, oh, this feels like they put a lot of money into a game that's not finished.
Do you know what they should have done with Starfield?
What's that?
You know how you start off in the game and you're like a miner?
Yeah.
They should have had the, like, beginning lead into where because I think you just start and you're, like, in the mine or something like that. I'm pretty sure it's kind of an abrupt like start.
Yeah.
I feel like what they should have done was had you travel to the mine in a shuttle, and you should have been napping, and somebody should have shaken you awake. And then they would have been like, "You're finally awake." And they should have gotten the same voice actor that plays the Nord, and they should have done that, because I'm 100% positive that that voice actor who played the Nord in that Skyrim game is probably also in Starfield somewhere.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a lot of the same voice actors. To kind of level set everyone, the mod that I've been playing is Star Wars Genesis, which is an ongoing in development mod that is working to overhaul the game of Starfield into a Star Wars game. And when I say in development, I mean it is fairly in development in the sense that I'm going to be very fair with you. A lot of the videos I saw in it that got me excited for this mod, I think were being run on like the top tier graphics cards, like zero issues sort of thing, because the game still looks like Starfield to me, but with like a Star Wars coat of paint, which is nice. But there are certain things that I think are still definitely showing as in development versus stuff that feels as fleshed out as what like a AAA Star Wars game would feel like, obviously. But at the same time, it's still very impressive. It's not just one mod, it is a mod list that has been curated. And it's something like over like 150 plus, maybe 200 plus mods, some very small, some very large, and these mods do everything from not just tweaking the Starfield mechanics, fixing some of the issues with AI and different bugs that were present in the game, but also just coding it in Star Wars. So instead of having the Union or whatever they're called in Starfield, it's now the Empire. Instead of the other faction, it's the Rebels. The game is set like 1 to 2 years before the Battle of Yavin, so it is 2-ish BBY. So you have a lot of like early Rebel Alliance stuff. There's like
powerful Empire stuff.
And I'll be honest, the main quest that you were set on is literally just the Starfield quest, but with names changed to Star Wars things. But that was fine for me. I hadn't played Starfield in so long that it felt unique to me. Right now, I'm playing as a Rhodian who is also a Mandalorian foundling, and I'm kind of a jerk. So I am a Rhodian, but I'm wearing Mandalorian armor that I got from Mandalore because I went to Mandalore and I found some armor that was just left in a ruin.
Is the character option that you're a Mandalorian foundling?
Yes.
Oh, you're not just role-playing it.
No. It is an option that provides you with certain perks. There's a Mandalorian that's part of the League that you kind of do quests with, and he was very nice to me when I introduced myself. I said, "Oh, you're a Mandalorian? I'm a Mandalorian too." I hadn't had the armor at the time, and he was like, "Ah, brother, good to meet you." And he shook my hand, and I was like, "Nice." And now we're going on quests together, and we're being Mandalorians.
He just trusted you.
Yeah, he's just like, "Oh, yeah, of course." Now, occasionally there is some graphical jank, as you'd come to expect from a massive mod. There's also occasionally some dialogue issues. This is something that is recognized by the mod team, I will say. I didn't like go into this mod thinking they fixed all of this, but occasionally the subtitles will say something Star Wars and the people will say something Starfield. The biggest example was there is a memorial in Coruscant that you can visit to the Clone Wars, and when you talk to a droid that's in front of it, he says, "This is a memorial to the Clone Wars," but he says that in the subtitles. His dialogue says, "This is a memorial to the Colony War." The Colony War is the war from Starfield. So it's stuff like that. Tiny little things where they forgot to redo the audio, they forgot to make that change, make this change, but it is a massive mod, and Starfield's a massive game with a lot of dialogue, so they definitely need to work on some of those smaller details to make it feel completely fleshed out. But I think one of the things that I just loved was walking through Coruscant and just having like astromech droids go past me and seeing stormtroopers patrol, and hearing people talk about where the best places to like hang out are. Like I was on some planet and some guy was like, "Yeah, the gambling here is terrible. You want to go to Coruscant if you need a good sabacc game." And I was like, that's the kind of stuff I just want to hear in my Star Wars game. It's just people telling me where to find a good sabacc game. I think overall the mod does a really interesting job at transposing the world of Star Wars onto the game of Starfield, but it definitely needs some work for a seamless experience. I will also say, not a completely easy mod to set up. It does have an installer, so you download the installer and you run it. The installer uses Jabberwock, which is a pretty popular mod installer. And for those who aren't familiar with how Jabberwock works, Jabberwock basically does the work for you. So you load a mod list, and then it connects to your Nexus account, and it pulls those mods from Nexus or ModDB. However, if you do not have a Nexus Premium account, you have to download every single mod manually through Jabberwock. But Nexus has a 3-day free premium, so I signed up for that and got the download done and then canceled it immediately because it is 100 gigs of mod data. It is It is the size of Starfield, which is also 100 gigs. It is a chunky game.
It's 200 gigs just to play Starfield with a Star Wars skin.
Yes, yeah, it is massive. But it was cool to try out, and I already own Starfield. According to the mod installation, you do also need to own the DLC, but it was on sale, so I grabbed the DLC. It was like $10 or something at the time. So that's Star Wars Genesis. I'm definitely going to continue trying it out, and if they do a major update, it looks like they have updates planned for the foreseeable future, so if there's a major update, I'll probably report back in a few episodes on how that update is.
Great.
So Seth, what have you been recently playing?
Recently, I've been playing a game called Hotel Architect, which was released in May of 2026 and was developed by Pathos Interactive and published by Wired Productions, which, fun fact, we met Wired Production at PAX and took some fun photos with them that were some appropriate, some not. Remember?
Oh, yeah.
The guy gave you a fake tattoo.
Oh, yeah, that was fun.
Oh, that's when you wanted to put the tattoo on your arm, and I said, don't do that.
Oh, yeah, because it looked like a razor blade.
Yeah. In Hotel Architect, you step into the shoes of someone who owns a hotel, and you handle everything about it, designing it, managing it, building up, handling the reservations, enticing new customers to come in, taking care of like making sure you have a gym and making sure that you have enough rooms for everybody, making sure that the rooms are clean and managing a staff. And it's a fun tycoon management game. It reminds me of the 2 Point games. Kind of the art style. It's a little unique. They're like the characters aren't even as realistic as like the 2 Point characters. They're more like little the Fisher Price people, but not the cylinder ones, the round ones.
Yeah.
They look like that. They look like the little Fisher Price ball people.
Okay.
It's a lot of fun. I had a hotel. You get various different employees, and then you have to maintain their salaries, and they get better at their job, but they also have a retirement date, which is kind of funny. So it'll be like 65 days till they retire, which is a long time in the game because each day plays out for a pretty long time. But what's funny is that like I had my first cleaner was like, his name was like Moppy Buckets or something like that. And which I think is a good name for a cleaner, being named Moppy Buckets. And he was with me so long that he was getting mad that his salary was not right, and he was very angry. He was going to quit, and I ended up raising all the salaries of everybody. And then I massively overbuilt my hotel and got it filled pretty quick by building a bunch of rooms. And at first, I had rooms that just had public restrooms. So like you stayed at the hotel, then you had to leave to go to the restroom to go shower and like use the bathroom and stuff. And I decided that if I can't have some hotels having bathrooms and some not having bathrooms, so I decided to give those rooms little bathrooms, even if it was just a toilet and a sink. And then upstairs are the nice bathrooms where you get a shower, a toilet, and a sink attached to your bedroom. I think it does add to the value of the room, because every room, then you can rent it. The bigger the room is, the more it's more valuable to rent out. And if it has like a bathroom, and if it has a bunch of furniture in it, like if there's like a couch, TV, and stuff, the room is more valuable. So it's a fun tycoon management game where you manage a hotel, which I think is a unique aspect, since there's like hospitals and museums and schools from the 2 Point group. So I think a good hotel management game is unique, and also something that you don't see a lot of, and also something that is in the core. Managing a hotel is a management like tycoon situation, because you have a lot of staff and you have to manage all the different aspects of like laundry and cleaning and engineers and like all that type of stuff, as well as a restaurant, bar. You can expand on that. So it's a pretty cool game, and that's Hotel Architect.
Nice. That was very cool. Well, today we're going to be talking about a cool game series. We're jumping back into our Sierra little trilogy here, or I don't know, quadrilogy. I don't know how many episodes we're going to do on this topic. We're jumping back into the Quest games because we're talking about Space Quest. Now, I don't have any memories of Space Quest similar to Police Quest. I think I played a little bit of the first Space Quest game as I've gotten older, but I don't remember ever playing it when we were younger. I don't think we had a copy. But Seth, do you have any memories of playing playing Space Quest.
Maybe. I feel like I wanted to play Space Quest.
It sounds like something you'd want to do.
I have not played Space Quest. I do like that the Space Quest, I'm sure we'll talk about this, they go from like EGA style graphics to like really nice drawn graphics. Similar to how like King's Quest evolved. We did find didn't we find Roger Wilco in Too Many Games? It was one of the big box.
One of the games, yeah. One of the big box Roger Wilcos, yeah.
Yeah, we found a Roger Wilco Space Quest game, which I guess all of the Space Quest games are Roger Wilco, since that's the main character. So we did find, I think, Space Quest 4, 3 or something like that. It was a big box game. I did pick it up, though. I picked up other games like Journeyman, but I did not pick up the Roger Wilco Space Quest game.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's my memory of it. Vaguely seeing it at a convention. Also, I get Space Quest confused with the Rex Nebular and the Cosmic Gender Bender, or whatever is it? That was the Microprose game.
Yeah.
That they did along with Dragon Sphere and Phantom. So I'm always like, when I look at screenshots, I'm like, is this Space Quest or is this Rex Nebular?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, it's easy to get them confused. They're very similar ideas, I think. They're both parody sci-fi point-and-click adventure games. Just one was built by Sierra and the other was built by those heavenly gods over at Microprose.
Yes, and I would assume that Rex Nebular was inspired by Space Quest. Or at least it's being like satirical off of Space Quest.
Yeah, I think 100%. I don't think that's a large stretch to make. Well, to get into the meat, as we say, of today's episode, like Police Quest, Space Quest got its start with Sierra developers looking to explore a different genre. Specifically, marketing staff member Mark Crow, it became friends with programmer Scott Murphy, and they came up with the idea of developing a sci-fi game. They both had a love of sci-fi. They loved classic sci-fi films. They loved Star Trek, and they wanted to explore that love into a game. Per a quote from Scott Murphy in the History of Space Quest from an archived version of Sierra Online's website, Sierra was in the mindset where everything was medieval and it was all fairly serious. I wanted to do a game that was more fun, and they did just that. The two came up with an idea for a game that was going to be kind of a parody of science fiction and science fiction tropes, and one thing they wanted to do was have a character that was not a hero. Instead, he was just a regular guy. The first pitch for the game would be rejected by Ken Williams, one of the heads of Sierra, as Ken felt it just wouldn't sell. In response, Scott and Mark put together a playable prototype, showed it to Ken, and Ken said, okay, yeah, I can see it. So he signed off on it.
I don't like this game. And then they're like, but we worked on it anyway. And he was like, I like it now. I feel like if I did work that my boss told me not to do, I would just get yelled at.
The first game, which was titled Space Quest Chapter 1, The Sarian Encounter, would be developed on the Adventure Game Interpreter, or AGI engine. As it was still early in the engine's life, there were a lot of early headaches trying to get the game to run the way the team wanted. Eventually, however, the game was ready for release in 1986. Like other Sierra games in the early AGI engine, the game features an environment that is, I call semi-3D. It's a flat environment, but it's got a sense of depth to it in that you can kind of travel up and down the planes of the level. The game also uses a text parser for commands and arrow keys to move your character around the screen. In the port for the Amiga, Apple IIgs, Mac, and Atari ST, there is added mouse movements. There was also pull-down menus, which was not entirely common for adventure games of that era, and I believe was a first for Sierra.
Because there were no sound cards readily available for PCs in 1986, music was done through the PC's internal speaker. However, some ports featured 3-voice soundtrack, and lucky players on the Apple IIgs would have a 15-voice soundtrack. Similar to other games of the era, Space Quest featured a form of copy protection. In the original release, there was a key disk that would be used to input a special key when you inserted the original game floppy. A later release, certain codes required to progress, such as coordinates, which were only accessible from the manual. That copy protection, still difficult to get around, and that's one of the reasons why Good Old Games gives you the manual when you buy them off of them.
Yeah, which is very helpful.
Some games are hacked or cracked to get around it, but it's sometimes you still have to open up the PDF, go to the page, and
especially when it's like
code.
Especially when it's like a game progression thing. Like if you can't get past a certain part of the game because you need to open the manual to a certain page.
Dark Sun Shattered Lands.
Yes,
so that you got through the entire prologue, through the sewers, and then it's like, what's on page 74 of the manual? And if you didn't have it, good luck. The game puts you in control of Roger Wilco, whose name comes from a B. Killband comic strip, which may be a reference to a shorthand in radio communication for Roger Will Comply. In the game, Wilco is a janitor aboard the spaceship Arcata, and he awakens from a nap to find that the ship has been seized by Sarians, who are a race of sinister aliens who plan to steal an experimental device called the Star Generator. Wilco flees the ship and lands on the planet Corona, where he must avoid getting killed by Sarian droids that are sent to eliminate him. Wilco does end up destroying the Star Generator in the end of the game and gets a golden mop as an award, which I feel like is a little insulting that he can't get an actual award, but I also feel like they're meeting him at his level and giving him something that's appropriate for his work function. When the game was released, it actually initially received mixed reviews, with Computer Gaming World calling it middle of the road, while Compute! Was more positive, praising the graphics and comparing them to a cartoon. The remake, which came out in 1991 and used the more advanced SCI engine, received more positive reception, with Dragon giving it a 5 out of 5 stars.
The sequel, Space Quest II: Valhalla's Revenge, would be released shortly after the first game in 1987. Developed in the same AGI engine, the game does not feature many gameplay changes beyond a stronger focus on being more linear versus the open-ended style that Space Quest I had. The game takes place a few months after the first, with Roger Wilco now serving as the head janitor for the Xenon Orbital Station 4. While he was previously pretty well known for his actions during the events of the first game, as the months have dwindled on, he has started to fade into obscurity as his 30 seconds of fame have now lapsed. While working a late shift, Wilco is knocked out in an ambush. He is kidnapped by Sludge Vohal, a disgraced Xenon scientist who created the Star Generator that Wilco destroyed in the first game. Seeking revenge, Vohal has created a clone army of insurance salesmen that he plans to use to eradicate the people of Xenon. Wilco is sent to the planet of Labion to serve as a slave in Vohal's mines, but his ship malfunctions and he crashes in the jungles of the planet. Wilco must try to avoid recapture by Vohal and thwart his evil plot. The game ends with Wilco defeating Vohal and getting into a cryopod to survive an explosion that he causes. Space Quest II was more positively received, though reviews at the time often warned players of the game's difficulty, which had considerably spiked since the release of the first game. PC Magazine in particular said the game was fun to play with other people. It wasn't multiplayer, it's just fun to play with other people to help you out with the puzzles. So get your friends, gather around at the CRT and play some Space Quest II together.
Hey, if it's between solving puzzles in Space Quest 2 and hitting a rock with a stick, I know what your friends are doing.
Stick rock.
Breaking some windows.
Now, Computer Gaming World would also praise the improved text parser, detailed animations, and improved puzzles. It also sold fairly well. Space Quest 2 is one of the few games that I was able to find definitive sales data on, in that it earned a Software Publishers Association gold medal, which was only awarded to games that sold over 100,000 units. So that means we definitively know it sold more than that.
Yeah, in the 80s, it's pretty good too.
Yeah.
The third game, Space Quest 3, The Pirates of Pestulon, would release back in 1989, and this would be the first of the series built in the updated Sierra Creative Interpreter, or SCI. An interesting note is that in the first two games, Roger Wilco was the default name. However, you could change it to be your own or a name of somebody else. In this new game, you can no longer change the name. You had to be Roger Wilco. The SCI engine provided the game with far improved visuals, better audio support, including some digitized voice lines, which is why I assumed that they probably kept it so that people could call you Roger Wilco, because now they're saying things. It's kind of like why Shepard has to be Shepard. An improved point-and-click interface and better animation. The game would be designed to utilize the Sound Blaster card, but unfortunately would ship with the incorrect drivers for IBM PC users, meaning the audio wouldn't work properly for those players, and they wouldn't know why. Story of our lives. This game says it's supposed to run on a 486. Oh, but it doesn't. Expanded memory doesn't, just explodes. Like previous Space Quest games, it parodied a lot of sci-fi pop culture. One thing that was added was some criticism at the Sierra as a company, as there is a scene that depicts Ken Williams and Director of Operations Rick Calvin as whip-cracking overseers of the programmers. This moment was reportedly included by Scott Murphy as a way of criticizing his own employers, as he felt the culture at Sierra had shifted away from what he was familiar with. The game's plot sees Wilco's cryopod being picked up by a garbage freighter. He awakens and steals an abandoned ship called the Aluminum Mallard, or for those in Europe, aluminium mallard, which he is able to repair and fly out. He lands on a desert planet where he is confronted by a bounty hunting cyborg who looks a lot like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who has been sent to find Wilco after he stole something in the previous game. Mind you, this game was coming out in the late 80s, so Terminator was a thing, and this game clearly wanted some inspiration from Terminator. He escapes and ends up at a burger joint where he plays an arcade game and finds a hidden message from two developers at a company called Scumsoft, who are being held against their will by a pirate named Elmo Pug. Included in the game is a mini game called Astro Chicken, which is the arcade game that Wilco plays. It's basically a clone of the arcade game Lunar Lander, where you have to try and get a chicken on a trampoline. If you get a high score, you'll see the hidden message from the programmers. On release, Space Quest 3 was well received. Computer and Video Games gave it an 83%, Dragon gave it a 4 out of 5, and reviews from other magazines like Compute, exclamation point, and Start with a capital S and a capital T, which was an Atari ST magazine, praised the game's graphics and sound.
Next up would be Space Quest 4, Roger Wilco and the Time Rippers, which was released in 1991. Space Quest 4 would be a fairly big advancement in the graphical quality and design of the series. The game features a robust 256 colors, hand-painted graphics, motion-captured animation, and a new point-and-click interface. Beyond the graphical changes and updated point-and-click gameplay, Space Quest 4 follows a lot of the same beats as previous Space Quest games. It's a point-and-click adventure game where its aesthetic and story are parodying the big names in sci-fi pop culture. The story follows Roger Wilco, who is now on his way back home to Xenon. Stopping at a bar for drinks, he is accosted by two androids who were hired by the resurrected Vohal, and Vohal was resurrected in the future and sent the androids back in time to kill Wilco. Mind you, Terminator 2 would have been popular when this came out. Before Wilco is killed by the time-traveling robots, he is saved by two soldiers who bring him into the future to a world that is set in the game of Space Quest 12, where the planet Xenon has been decimated by Vohal. Wilco plans to stop Vohal so he can save his planet, and he has to travel back in time to the future fictional game of Space Quest 10, where he has to save his future ex-girlfriend and stop Vohal. He also meets a son who is his son with the future ex-girlfriend. The game leads to various time travel shenanigans, including a sequence where you go all the way back to Space Quest 1. So it is definitely a game that is parodying the kind of time travel tropes, as well as having that Terminator influence. The game was positively received. Dragon gave it a 5 out of 5. White Wolf gave it a 4 out of 5. Computer and Gaming World would praise the CD-ROM version of the game, which was released slightly later than the original floppy disk version. And the CD-ROM version included voice acting. They praised this voice acting, saying it was much better than King's Quest V.
It's high praise.
A 2011 list created by Adventure Gamers about the best adventure games ever made placed Space Quest 4 at number 48, which does sound like a high number, but if you had to list every adventure game ever made and rate them in 2011, number 48 is pretty good.
The next game, Space Quest V, Roger Wilco, The Next Mutation, released in 1993, also saw a departure from the previous titles. One thing we didn't know is that all the previous titles would credit Mark and Scott as the two guys from Andromeda. Space Quest V would be the first to not feature Scott Murphy as a developer. The game was also not created in-house at Sierra, but was rather created at Dynamix, who are all the same people who made Sid and Al's Incredible Machine. Also, oddly enough, Space Quest V was sponsored by Sprint. The Sprint logo can be found throughout the game, and there's references to Sprint's competitor, MCI, as not being worth it. Is Sprint even a thing anymore?
They no longer exist. They were acquired by T-Mobile on April 1st of 2020, and all of their services, retail stores, and accounts were all integrated into T-Mobile.
Space Quest V would be given away as an award for signing up to Sprint service, which is a great award. Also, another odd thing is that Space Quest V would only be released on floppy disks, beyond a compilation CD that would get released later. This means that despite being released in 1993 after the CD release of Space Quest 4, the game would not have a CD quality audio or full voice acting. According to Dynamix artist Sean Murphy, a version with voice work was planned but scrapped due to Dynamix being in financial trouble at the time. To go back to the game itself, the plot of Space Quest V is a more direct parody of Star Trek. Roger Wilco applies to StarCon Academy. Are these all in continuity order?
Yeah.
So he's finally getting around to going to space school.
Yes.
So while he's at the academy, he butts head with Rames T. Kirk, a commander who wears a bad toupee. He being Roger Wilco, cheats on an aptitude test and then meets Ambassador Beatrice Wankmeister, who is his future ex-girlfriend. Quirk ends up volunteering to assist Beatrice on a trip to find out who has been dumping toxic waste across the galaxy. Does he cheat?
Wilco cheats on the aptitude test.
Yeah.
Meets Ambassador Beatrice Wankmeister. Realizes that she's his future ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
But then Quirk, jumps in and's like,
because he's a womanizer.
Yes.
I gotcha. Okay. At the same time, partially thanks to his cheating, Wilco is able to get command of the SCS Eureka. Oh, he wasn't caught cheating. He just was cheating. I see. Which the SCS Eureka is a garbage ship that looks like a vacuum cleaner. The rest of the story has various parodies of things like Alien and other characters in Star Trek as they have to fight mutant viruses that's being spread across the galaxy through the toxic waste dumps. Which, as somebody who's watched a lot of Star Trek, not too far from the plots that run on the shows.
Yeah, that sounds like a season 1 next gen plot.
Yeah, or something that Neelix did by accident.
Captain Janeway, I'm really sorry, but I spilled all the toxic waste in the Gamma Quadrant.
In the galaxy. I was driving my garbage truck. Space Quest V received positive reviews, with Computer Gaming World calling it a first-rate game and praising the sound and design, which for a game that sold its soul to Sprint and took out the audio in order to keep the lights on, pretty good outcome.
Now, last, and I don't know if not least, but definitely last, would be Space Quest VI, Roger Wilco in the Spinal Frontier. Released in 1995, Space Quest VI is the final game in the series. It was developed in the SCI-32 engine, allowing it to use super VGA graphics, complete with the 256 colors and 640 by 480 resolution. The game also used a verb bar window at the bottom of the screen for players to interact with items as they played. There was also incorporation of more cartoony graphics and 3D rendered images. A majority of Space Quest VI was designed by Josh Mandel, though Sierra would later ask Scott Murphy to come in and complete the game when Mandel had to leave due to issues that he had with the company. Sierra would promote the game as being solely made by Scott Murphy. In fact, they would tell people that the game was made by one of the men from Andromeda, and Scott did not like this, apparently, because he did not work on the majority of the game. He, in fact, only finished it, so he was a little grumpy. Mandel would go on to speak about his frustrations with the game and his overall disappointment in its final release in an interview that he gave in 2006, where he talked about how, for example, there's a item that they removed from the final game that was going to be used for a puzzle, but I guess it's still referenced in the manual, and he's like, a lot of players got really confused because they thought this was something that was important to the game, but it was removed by Sierra at the last minute, so it's not important. The plot of the game involves Wilco returning to StarCon after his adventure in the previous title, only to be court-martialed and demoted due to his breaking of StarCon regulations in that previous game. He is demoted to second-class janitor and serves aboard SCS Deep Ship 86, a space station that is definitely not a reference to Deep Space Nine. After being awarded some shore leave, Wilco meets an elderly woman named Sharpay who plans to kill him in order to use his body to achieve immortality. She's basically going to hijack his body and get rid of his mind. Wilco is rescued by Stellar Santiago, an alien he develops a love interest with. Sharpay then uses nanites to try to transfer her mind into Stellar's body, and Wilco has to shrink himself down to fight off the nanites. That also sounds like a plot of a Star Trek Voyager episode, but mid-run and mostly involving the Doctor. I have to go inside you, Mr. Paris. I have to stop the nanites.
Every time that I think about the Doctor, I just remember the story that my friend told me, where my friend was at a convention that Robert Picardo was at, and he was very excited to meet Robert Picardo. He went up to meet Robert Picardo, and Robert Picardo shoved him out of his way because he had to really use the bathroom really bad, and my friend was in his way. So whenever I think of Robert Picardo, I think about him, I think about that, and I also think about Robert Picardo telling a story to a interviewer who said, "Hey, you are now Star Trek famous. How do you feel about that?" And he said, "The thing when you're Star Trek famous is that you get action figures, so now my children throw action figures of me down the stairs."
Now, there was also a demo version of Space Quest 6 that was distributed through the Sierra Interactive magazine. It was also distributed in copies of PC Gamer and early releases of Phantasmagoria. That this demo version, actually features a different storyline than Space Quest 6. In this different storyline, Deep Ship 86 is attacked by a group of mechanoids named the Bjorn, which are a reference to the Borg. The Bjorn turned the crew into lemon sorbet, and Wilco has to restore the crewmates back to normal. It's a weird game. The game received mixed reviews, with Next Generation giving it a 3 out of 5, PC Gamer giving it an 82%, and Mac User giving it a 2 out of 5. The Next Generation review implied that fans of the series would like the game, but not new players. And PC Gamer had a similar consensus, saying that it's not the best of the Space Quest series, but would still appeal to fans. Exact sales on most of the games were hard to find, but Sierra Online reported that a combined sales of all the games surpassed 1.2 million by March of 1996. So all the games collectively sold very well. It's just interesting that a lot of them didn't score very well. Like, all of the games kind of had their quirks, except for like Space Quest 2, which was like praised out of the park. But most of the other games got kind of mixed reviews.
But I think Space Quest was Damien's favorite.
I mean, and it's a favorite for a lot of people. I think it's a very nostalgic game for a lot of people.
I think it also is probably the silliest of them all, because let's be real, Police Quest is the most serious of them all. King's Quest is like bordering serious, but also fun. I feel like it's like fantasy and fantastical, so it kind of has that fun, but I still think some of the King's Quest games do take itself a little serious, and then Space Quest is just bonkers. It's just like they just had they're just having fun. I mean, the plots of these games don't even make sense sometimes because they're so like out there and outlandish. I mean, you have like this guy, he's like a janitor who's fighting off aliens. It just goes crazy. Where like King's Quest is like, I have to find the crown for the king. And like the Police Quest is like, I have to meticulously solve this crime. So like, I think all three of them get a little sillier as they aged. Because they became more, even Police Quest got a little sillier. Then it got really serious with SWAT. Yeah. But I think that's like the thing with Space Quest is that it's kind of funny. Which also, if you think about Rex Nebular and the Cosmic Genderbender versus Dragon Sphere and Phantom of the Opera, Rex Nebular is also a really funny satire game. So, like, it's really, I feel like Space Quest and Rex Nebular represented this time with these companies of making adventure games where they're like, okay, we have our serious game, we have our fantasy game, we need our fun space satire game.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of like where Space Quest kind of lives, which is fun. Now, while there were attempts to continue the Space Quest series, a Space Quest 7 game would never be officially released. Various fans, however, have made their own version, such as Space Quest Volhall Strikes Back in 2011, which features Roger Wilco fighting Sludge Volhall again. And while not official to the series, Mark Crow and Scott Murphy both launched a Kickstarter under the name of a company called Two Guys from Andromeda. Space Venture would be the game that they would launch on Kickstarter in May of 2012, with Chris Pope serving as the executive producer. The Kickstarter narrowly met its goal by June of 2012 and would go on to enter development hell. A backers-only version of Space Venture would go on to be released in 2022, with a public version releasing in April 1st of 2025, and that was released in early access. The full release would go on December 23rd of the same year, 2025. Early reviews have been rough, with critics calling the game unfinished and buggy, but some recent reviews on Steam have been a bit more positive, and the game currently holds a very positive review on Steam. However, that is stemming from 77 user reviews.
Yeah, it is not a huge sample size.
I gotta check it out. Space Venture, is that what it's got called? Outside the games, there were also a series of comics called The Adventures of Roger Wilco, published by Malibu Comics. That series only ran 3 issues, but adapted the first game. A walkthrough novelization was also released in 1991 called The Official Guide to Roger Wilco's Space Adventures, which covers Space Quest 1 through 4, with a reprint in 1993 adding in Space Quest 5. Similarly, the Space Quest Companion offers coverage of 1 through 4, also received a reprint in 1993 that featured Space Quest 5, which these were guides on how to beat the game.
Yeah, and they also were like slightly novelized, so like they were like in canon to the story, but also told you how to beat the game.
If Jane Jensen had any involvement to them, there would be the cult.
Yes, yeah, it'd be like, here's the secret to Space Quest. Also, the devil's in this one.
The devil cult is involved, and the Holy Grail. Jane Jensen, if you're listening to this, from the bottom of my soul and the bottom of Zach's, we love you, and all your work is just bangers.
I when I was working on these notes and I saw that Chris Pope worked on Space Venture, I was like, oh, isn't that guy that Seth loves? And then I was like, no, that's Lucas Pope.
I don't think Lucas Pope would be involved with something like this.
No, I don't think so either. Now, to get into our retro rewinds, unless Seth had anything else to add about Space Quest.
If you like adventure games, check it out. I think if you like funny adventure games, which is actually not really my jam. I've tried to play.
Both of us have talked about we're not a big fan of like funny, like this type of style of funny,
like the yuck type of game, like Leisure Suit Larry, Space Quest. The games are decidedly good games, like they're well made. I like myself to be serious. I guess it's weird, but so it's hard for me to play games that are like heavy on the satire. I just don't find it funny.
Yeah,
which then just kind of everything kind of falls flat for me. But that's probably because I just don't have a funny bone, I guess.
Now, to get into our retro rewind, Seth had me play Grand Prix Circuit, developed by Distinctive Software and published by Accolade in 1988. Grand Prix Circuit is a game where you race Formula One cars, which I'm slowly becoming more familiar with. I have two friends. They are a married couple. They love Formula One, and I learn about Formula One just a little more every time I talk to them. Now, in the game, there are 3 cars to choose from. You got the McLaren MP44, the Williams FW12C, and the Ferrari F18788C. I drove the McLaren, and I did pretty bad, both in the qualifying and in the actual race. I was like 10th in qualifying, and I came in 3rd in the race, which I guess isn't terrible, but it wasn't great. I did feel that the game, though, was actually not terrible for a racing game from 1988. The responsive controls were really nice. The graphics, I mean, obviously a little dated, and there was a little like stuttering that was happening that I think was just due to the fact that the game was probably stuttered at the time. But it felt very responsive in the actual driving. I was able to do a couple like drifts when I hit turns, which I'm not really good at doing in other racing games, and I really enjoyed it. I was taking a look at reviews, and a lot of people criticized the controls, and I think it's because I set things to automatic and I didn't set things to manual. And apparently the manual controls are obtuse, so I think I just lucked out and I put the game in automatic somehow. Overall, though, if you put it in automatic, it holds up. Next week, Seth, you can play a game for MS-DOS. I want you to play The Search for Dr. Riptide.
That sounds horrendous. Just coming off of a fresh play of Zach having me play Crisis in the Kremlin, which was developed by Barbu Corporation and Spectrum Holobyte and published by Spectrum Holobyte in North America and by Microprose in the EU. They were both released in 1991. In Crisis in the Kremlin, you play as the General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. The game starts in January of 1985, and you can actually continue to play the game past the time that the actual Communist Party actually lasted. And if you do, you get some events that didn't happen that would happen in the future or could have happened in the future, like the Soviets curing AIDS or cloning animals so that they prevent world hunger by using in vitro cloning of meats. So some things that could happen because there's smart Soviet scientists at the play. When I played, I started in January of 1985, as everybody does, though I might have well been too free in regards to my policies because I decided to turn them all to max liberal and like just not care about anything. So like I was like open trade borders to other nations. I said give everybody as much freedoms as they want. I don't care if they even work. Like just whatever. Let's have a happy culture, right? And so I built a very pro people, pro public everything, and I started advancing the game. What do you know? All the nations, they started liking me more. All my people started liking me more, and I was like, this is great. I'm just gonna I was just like speed running the end of the collapse of the Soviet Union from 1985. Gonna tell you something though. There was a group of people that did not like what I was doing, and that was the Politburo. I got voted out September of 1985. So my communist man was the General Secretary from January of 1985 to September 1985, which I'm going to tell you was longer than Liz Truss was the Prime Minister of England. At least there were some people who had shorter reigns of leadership than I did.
Yeah, you did good job.
And so for those 9 glorious months, the Soviet Union was heading towards being the most free nation in the world.
You definitely were not the shortest serving general secretary. That was Vladimir Ivashko, who served for 5 days.
The game actually had some decent positive review, though some people did say that it did steer people to a more truth-telling of the history, such as the slow liberation of political and social policies and the establishment of free market, which is what actually happened and why the Soviet Union collapsed in real life. And so the story of the game kind of pushes you to that over time, not what I was doing, which was speedrunning. My favorite review, though, was somebody saying that the game was somewhat tedious for non-accountants. Overall, I thought the game was fun and holds up. I guess I say this if you like slow games like old school Carmen Sandiego, and instead of being Carmen Sandiego, you want to be the General Secretary of the USSR, you could check out Crisis at the Kremlin. I played it and it was fun. I don't think I was using the right graphics driver though, because all the graphics looked a little weird and a little pixelated. So I'm not sure if it was just me picking the wrong graphics or if it was just what it would have been at the time. They did, however, release they not being the official people, somebody released a version of it in 2017, which has updated graphics, and those somebody's was Nostal Games, and it's kind of like a spiritual successor that seems to hold up, as it's got very positive reviews on thousands of people reviewing it, not 77, and it goes for about $5 on Steam or $3 on sale. Next week, Zach, you could play Killer Bees for MS-DOS.
Great. Well, with that, I want to thank everyone for listening to today's episode. If you have any memories of Space Quest, you want to talk to us about Space Quest, you want to tell us how we're wrong about Space Quest, you can do so by emailing us at classicgamingbrothers@gmail.com. We're available wherever podcasts can be found, be it Podbean, iTunes, or iHeartRadio. We're available on social media. Look us up. We're also available on Patreon. Be sure to support us if you can. If you can't, that's fine. If you want to follow us on YouTube and like and subscribe, that'd be great. And if you want to go to our website, we just updated it like a few months ago. We moved it to a different platform, but it's been updated. That's classicgamingbrothers.com. With that, Seth, am I forgetting anything?
Don't play games like my brother.
And don't play games like my brother.
I've been Seth.
And I've been Zach.
And we've been the Classic Gaming Brothers.
That's right.